Yes, 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 yes. You gonna push yours?
I am.
So we actually can get a little closer.
There we go.
There we go. Awesome,
Right.
awesome. Hi everybody, how are you?
Wonderful.
You doing wonderful, ladies?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes.
Thank you so much for making this journey. I want to invite our audience today. This is Desiree and the Parrish partners. We have Anita and Petra, and today you're going to speak to the Energy of Success. Energy of Success. And we're here live at Homework in Rancho Santa Fe. Beautiful place, isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful facility. It's
Yes.
a beautiful drive. It allows you to drop whatever's going on in your head and just be ready and open for whatever you're going to experience. So I love it up here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. I'm glad you made it up. I'm glad you made it up. So tell me and tell us and everybody else about Parrish Partners.
Well, Parrish Partners is a boutique firm in Orange County. It is founded and established by Mark and Michelle Parrish. They're wonderful partners, and they have several of us. I'm Dr. Anita. This is my partner, Petra, and we've got several other consultants that are part of the team.
What's your take on Parrish Partners? What's he gonna add to that?
Specializing in executive coaching, leadership training, executive search. We do pride ourselves in developing customized programs for each organization and client we work with, and have a beautifully diverse workforce with a lot of talent and different areas of expertise that we bring together to create these custom programs.
And we work across several different types of companies. We come out of the aerospace industry, education, attorneys. So whatever your need is, Parrish Partners is willing to lock arms and help you be successful.
So who is your best client? Who do you work with the most?
Typically with organizations that need some help in establishing a culture that would support their growth strategy, and with that comes a little bit of a mind shift that is typically taking place with top of the organization and then coming down to director manager level. We develop individual skills and competencies for individuals in particular roles, and create also a culture that will support long-term, strategically sustainable growth.
And we usually do that by individual and team coaching, executive coaching.
And so what size usually is these companies?
They range from small to mid-sized companies. Some of them are in Fortune 500. Just
Startups
depends.
to
Some are
all the
startups,
way,
right?
Fortune 500 companies, international organizations, and a lot of privately owned as well.
So say for example a company is a couple years and they have what size employees? 5 to 10 or obviously more, but the smallest would be about 5 to 10. And they want to create a better culture. Is it primarily to be able to get more effective for their team to be more effective, or to be the team to stay on longer, or to be able to incorporate different benefits to their team?
I think it's all of those.
All of the above, yeah.
Focusing on leadership and management. We're always looking to help individuals because we know that individuals make up teams and teams make up organizations. So it really starts with the individual. We have different assessment tools to help people unlock what's within. And we really like to focus on more effective interpersonal dynamics. So when we talk about leadership, it always begins first with self-leadership.
Yes.
So that you can lead others better. And then as the individuals grow, the organization grows. I like to call it pursuing a shared purpose.
So first we start at the top then? You start with the CEOs, the C-level first,
Ideally,
and then work
yes,
down,
we do.
and then work through that?
And then really talk to the leadership with respect to learning and development. We have different departments usually that we include in these initial conversations. And then, take in their insights and then do our own discovery to really see get a finger on the pulse of where this organization is at the time. And again, then come up with a very customized approach to their specific situation.
So I imagine if you start from the top, you actually get an idea of what kind of culture, what kind of culture they're trying to foster by their personalities and their goals. Is it usually revenue driven? Is it usually because they say we want to be able to, reach this goal, this benchmark, for the different corporations, we want to be able to reach this revenue goal, and with that, we need to be able to make sure that our team is on board and have that same unified goal?
Well, there's a couple of different influences that usually come together. So you have obviously the internal growth plan and strategy. Then you have sometimes expectations from their respective clients. We've come across that a lot with diversity and inclusion challenges for organizations. That's usually something that is equally driven internally as much as from the client base. I think there are a couple of different challenges that we approach in that same manner. So it's really, I don't know, how would you sum it up real quick?
Well, for starters, when you talk about diversity and inclusion, Petra and I were just having this conversation.
Yeah.
We really need to broaden the narrative around diversity and inclusion to go beyond the way people show up, either as a woman of color or as, you know, a woman of German descent. But we're looking at your background, how that affects your way of thinking and your way of being and your way of approaching. And that really makes the problem-solving process so much richer when we look at the diversity of who people are and what they bring to the table, not just what they look like. So we really try and focus on that as well when we think about diversity and inclusion. But we don't call that out specifically. We just bring it to people's attention that in order to get a better team outcome, you need to appreciate and leverage all of the diversity on your team, no matter how that shows up. And let's not limit it to the way people present.
Sure. But the thing, isn't that quite a process? And say, for example, when companies are hiring constantly turnover, that means they would be willing to, or they need to invest that kind of time in each individual person, and then with hopes that person is going to be part of that permanent team.
You bring up an interesting point. My personal philosophy is companies really have to spend more time investing in the people that they have instead of recruiting for the people they think they need. Because to your point, it costs so much more to constantly be recruiting and onboarding versus spending that time to develop your team. That's how I see it. So I like to say that I help shift the paradigm from flavor of the month activities that fall flat to people-focused initiatives that really bring everyone into the fold, and going back to that whole shared purpose. And I know Petra is huge on energy leadership and helping people understand what might be getting in your way as far as being a successful self-leader so that you can be a successful leader of others.
I think that's a really good key, though, the self-leader, because some people, just because you're a founder or CEO or whatever, doesn't mean you're a born leader.
Right.
You know, you could be a born creator or a thinker or, you know, something that's very ingenious, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean even like that. I mean, a lot of people that are, I won't even say myself personally, but I enjoy creating and building and so forth. But as far as the managing part, probably not as strong as that, because I come from the background of being commissioned and being self-employed. I've always had my own job, so I think that everyone should be you should show up knowing what you need to do and be willing to be able to do it. You don't need that inspiration, so to speak. That just being able to be part of something that's growing is enough, but it's not. You know, like you said, I'm not addressing all those little individual things that can make a difference. So,
but we also don't see ourselves oftentimes.
Right.
So the biggest benefit of us coming in as a third-party consultant in these situations is that we deliver that external perspective. We have oftentimes organizations that have already collected a lot of data internally, and they have usually a pretty good idea of where they're at with some of the things they're challenged by. But to bring in that external perspective really helps to really fine-tune some of these approaches that we then recommend. And it's very much a very complex set of challenges nowadays. So you have, to Anita's point earlier, you have a cross-cultural situation, you have generational training that's oftentimes needed in order to bring in different learning backgrounds, right? You have the late baby boomers and the millennials, and you have people that have just simply differently learned, and their set of expectations coming into an organization has changed. So we really come in and look at all these different challenges and then see how do we align, you know, and how do we create a story. Every organization really thrives on a consistent, delivered story. And the story keeps changing depending on where everyone is in that organization, right? So the story is very important, and I think that aligning inner purpose and passion with outer goals and strategies, and bring that out in a consistent way, and really create a sense of contributing to something that's beyond, you know, just your one personal goal and your maybe one personal agenda, and really contribute to something that's bigger and long-term oriented. Makes a big difference. So we really like to come in and start with something that creates a foundation and then build from there. So usually our engagements may start out with 6 months, and then we come back and really kind of almost fine tune and make sure that it's a constantly paying forward process. So we really train the trainer in that sense too. Meaning whoever gets onboarded later on is going to be marinated in the same culture that's going to become their method of operating.
That's what my question was, is that how long the process was, and was it kind of one and done, or whether it was an ongoing process? Because again, as your company grows, as different departments expand, as your different products and programs, come of it, it's a constant process.
Yes.
So I think companies really need to see that this is more not an option service, it's more of a necessity.
It's a necessity.
Because of all the different things that were, I guess 100 years ago, those people came to work and they did their job, and now, because of all the different factors involved in it, and the different mediums in which we are communicating, now we're utilizing so many different mediums that you have to communicate to people in different ways and
think a lot more often out the box. You got to be so much more agile with your problem solving skills. You got to approach things much more on the go and collaborate more intensively. And we come across a lot of industries that have traditionally worked in a very different format. And the requirements have changed to a point where people need different skill sets to be successful. So it's not just in a traditional sense, but also, and that's a heightened demand on each individual, right? So if you're already performing at a very high level in your traditional sense, out of a sudden you're now, asked to do business development in a different way, client relationship management in a different way. And all that requires a skill set that was traditionally maybe not part of that expertise in that specific field. So we really see how do we complement, how do we add to what's already there in a manner that's sustainable and provides on a personal level growth, on the team level, and for the organization.
I can see it being very valuable for a new company to be able to start off correctly and avoid a lot of the costly, not only in finances but in time, mistakes. If you kind of come in early and develop a blueprint, then you can kind of keep working from there, as opposed to growing to 10, 20, 50 people and then having to go back through and churn.
And go beyond a quick training, right? So a lot of times when we talk to business owners and organizations, we find there's this, what can we do quickly to get over an obstacle or over a challenge? And we always try to really say there's definitely something here that we would want to provide you with, but we also would like for you to have, and then we really talk about what does that need in order to again sustainably grow forward. Meaning a small training on a particular skill or competency only really can be valuable long term if there's an underlying culture that would support that behavior.
So I explained it to a colleague this way just the other day. I said, look at me as a doctor. When you go to the doctor, you're usually in some kind of pain, right? So I'm going to give you a program that's going to address that initial pain so that we can make you comfortable enough to do a deep dive and find out what's really going on, because the pain are just the symptoms. We need to find out what that root cause is. And you really find out that root cause by talking to the people. Sometimes it's a focus group. Sometimes it's talking a little more in depth to the CEO. Sometimes it's just casual conversations with the folks. And so to Petra's point, yes, we do want a long-term relationship, because we want to make sure that we're not just addressing the pain point, but that you're healthy.
Right.
And so that health means we need to give you a plan that you can sustain your health. We're not just going to train you and leave you. We're in it for your best organizational health.
So the companies need to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's another thing that we get into with these conversations oftentimes is what's your commitment level, right? So there's a lot of training that takes place in various departments and organizations, but how do we connect all that and really produce, again, a solid foundation for long-term growth? And I think that really has to do with the level of commitment that leadership has to actually really develop that.
It's
with
leadership,
us. Because it's really the level of success is really determined by the level of commitment that leadership Parrish brings to the initial initiative and the long-term support of it.
And the long-term support is really where the rubber meets the road, because for some reason people seem to think that, oh, I've been trained. Well, yes, you've been trained, but you need to apply what you've learned. So the work, although we're keeping you active and thinking and reflecting in the class, the work starts when you leave the workshop, because you can't just put it on a shelf and let it collect dust. You need to apply those principles that we've talked about.
And that takes practice.
It does.
And that's when we come in and do maybe another workshop or do something just to
Team coaching.
make sure exactly there's a little bit more of a deep dive and an understanding of how it again applies to your teammates and how do you really implement that on a daily basis.
And a lot of it has to do with how people see themselves, how they show up, which brings me back to a couple of things that you said earlier about you've always been an entrepreneur and collaboration. So I want to hear some more about homework.
Okay.
And my first question is, where's the E?
We lost the E.
You lost the E.
We wanted to, well, really, literally, we couldn't brand, homework, the word, and put the URL for that.
Okay.
And then we wanted it to be different. We wanted it to sound like homework, but we didn't want it to actually people think it was homework.
Okay.
So we wanted them to be able to see that home and that work, and it just kind of worked out that way. That's where it was.
Well, if you don't mind, here's what we'd like to do.
Okay.
We want to provide just a real quick summary on what energy leadership is, and then the energy of success. And then we're going to explain what ails most people. And AILS is an acronym for assumptions, interpretations, limiting beliefs. And then we're going to talk about the gremlins that keep that story going. So Petra's going to explain some things to us, and then we're going to ask Desiree to share some examples from her own experience in each one of these categories. And then we're going to come and wrap up. So, Petra.
So our process is founded on what is called a core energy process. And what it really means is to raise awareness and understanding around how attitudes impact our ability to create sustainable change. So the word energy and attitude is actually can be used, equally. The energy of success is really the idea of how do we utilize certain levels of energy, and there's actually 7 within all of us that fluctuate in terms of where we're at any given moment. How do we utilize energy that actually gets us where we want to go versus starts to become a barrier? And Anita touched on what ails us. So the barriers are really the moments where we are held back by blocks. And those blocks are typically assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs. And then some of those really deeper lying blocks that we have internally that prevent us from moving forward or stepping really on the gas and getting us where we want to go are these gremlins. And that's obviously a fear-based little roommate up there that always keeps you small and safe, and really stops you short of becoming maybe really of what you're actually capable of. So starting out with assumptions. Assumptions is really the idea of there are things that you have experienced in the past, and I want to say that most of these barriers, if not all, are really created in the past. So what's happening oftentimes is you're making decisions that are really sort of looking in the rear mirror. You're not really looking forward, you're taking cues and experiences and things from the past. And with assumptions, it's that you have had an experience and assume that whatever you're up against at that moment will behave or look like or feel like the same way. So it's really something that keeps you, and it's unique for everyone based on their set of experiences, of course, but somehow very difficult for us to let go of and say, this could actually go completely different, because our brain likes to always make us feel as if what we know is what repeats itself, what we don't know is probably worse.
So for our audience, I want to be clear, we're not talking new age ethereal philosophy here. We're talking about real stuff. We all make assumptions about things. We all have interpretations that we create, and we all have limiting beliefs. So Desiree, when you first started homework, what were some assumptions that might have been getting in your way or slowing you down?
Oh boy, I think the assumptions is that that it was a large project. It was big because it involved both real estate and hospitality. Although I've had experience in real estate, but not in this way, not in the hospitality way, especially being able to incorporate the new co-working, co-sharing element of it. So that it was cash intensive, as far as, for the properties and furnishing the properties and this being able to outreach itself. I've always self-funded my projects, I've always bootstrapped it. And I knew that I couldn't do this one because one, the explosion of this co-working, co-sharing industry is going so fast. It's increased 200% in the last 5 years. So I needed to be able to zoom right in, especially with our niche of being women professionals and entrepreneurs. And then especially again with the cash, we have to acquire the homes that I didn't know. I know I couldn't do it alone. I know I didn't want to do it alone. So I need to get investors. So I we had the assumption, okay, do I have enough family and friends? That's your first round that you go through that had the funds for me to be able to jumpstart it. And fortunately I did, but now again we're going back to the well because we need to be able to take it to the next level. So I've had to, one assumption I had, when we constantly raising funds and constantly looking for investors as we grow, because again, that's just the way that it works out. So that was huge because some of the people that I expected, that I knew that had the most wealth, I expected to participate, did not. And some of the people that I didn't expect did, but it's still in a smaller way.
So those are sub-assumptions. Because first of all, you're assuming this project is too big, how am I going to make it happen? And then when you got past that assumption, you made the assumption that, well, these people will, that didn't go. These people won't, and that did. So we got assumptions on top of assumptions.
That was related to your past experience, right? So I was just trying to figure out what was one of those key experiences that you've had in the past that you immediately attached to something that you were expecting to go the same way. So I guess to your point again, with the fundraising, there were certain expectations or assumptions that this would repeat itself and it actually turned out differently.
Yes.
So how would we go from assumptions to interpretations? Because they almost sound similar. Like, I'm assuming that you will based on what you did last time, but maybe my interpretation led me to assume something that's not true.
Well, interpretation is really based on, and we all have a certain lens on, right? When we look in the world and when we look at things. So interpretations are really, in a way, judgments that we arrive at based on how we perceive certain things. And interestingly enough, with interpretations, we don't really go through the effort of confirming a whole lot of that. We tend to really shortcut and attach a meaning to something that is very unique to, again, our particular pair of lenses that we look at, be it a situation, be it a person, be it something that we seem to believe, to understand and know, even though, again, our way of looking at it is limited in that way. So it makes us believe that we've completely understood a scenario or a situation when in fact what we understand is, again, our past experience that we now apply and say, because of what I think I know, I believe this to be true, when in fact it could be looked at in many different ways, right?
I've heard it put this way. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Exactly.
Because back to Petra's point, we see the world through our lens. So once you got the money, got past those assumptions about not having the funding, what interpretations were coming up for you as you were becoming successful?
Well, a couple of things, and even speaking to the people that invested and didn't, the interpretation, this was really huge for me. The interpretation from the ones who did not invest was, do they not believe in me? They know me all my life. They know that I've been working hard all my life. They know that I'm credible, that I'm honest, and so forth and so forth. So they did not believe in my project. Did they not believe in me? Or do they just want to see me tough it out? So that was something I had to really, because it also could affect my relationship with them as a friend going forward. Do I and continue to invest, especially because we've invested in friendship for years. If I continue to invest in this friendship, is it really a friendship or is it just an association? And then also the interpretation of people that did, invest. I say, then you must really believe in me. And now I really believe in you. And I'm like, all hands out. And, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying these are the thoughts that came up. And I think it would be natural for anyone in any situation. If you're drowning in water and someone reaches out a hand and helps you out, then that's a person that you automatically feel obliged to or engaged or enroll with. And people that did not, you may not feel the same way about. So it doesn't matter the fact that it was due to the investments with anything. It was a test for me, was somewhat of a testing time for my investors. So with that, then I had to really deep digger and sort through, and I had to realize, okay, then Desiree, you're in this basically alone and on your own. You've got to make sure that you are just as ruthless in the sense of just being diligent and being focused on making it happen, because you cannot now rely on anybody else. The people that you think you could rely on, you can't rely on anyone else to make this happen for you. So what is your belief, and how strongly did I believe in it to be able to go through, I don't want to say the pain, but you call it what you want, to go through the trials and tribulations to be able to make this, to bring this to fruition. And there's my wanting, my desire to do that, sincere, or as pure as it was initially. Initially, the pure and desire and mission was to be able to support women and working and living their lives in a beautiful surrounding. That was my mission. So now make sure I don't get any interference with the fact I'm going to do it because I want to prove anything to anybody. Because sometimes that sinks into your psyche. It's like, I'm going to prove them wrong. They didn't believe me, now I'm not even sure. I didn't want to go from that point on. It had to be me, because that never works and doesn't matter anyway at the end of the day.
I want to explore something that you just said, and I really want to hear what Petra says about this. I heard what you're saying, that, it tested the relationship. Does that mean that they don't believe in me? These were your interpretations. How much of that is projection? Because while I hear you, let's take the case that maybe one or two of those people really didn't have it to give you. And so in that sense, it's got nothing to do with how much they value you. It's the fact that they just don't have it to give. So how much is projecting what's going on with us onto other people a part of the whole interpretations?
And I did ask for clarification in some instances. I asked, it was not a good time for you and so forth. But then some people, I do know absolutely sure that it was convenient and it was there. It's just their decision not to. But I did want to make sure I factored that in, because timing is everything.
Absolutely.
Well, also oftentimes I think when we present, and that goes for these wonderful ideas that create later on these exceptional business opportunities, we present that, and oftentimes what we don't take into account is that whoever is listening to us is imagining themselves in that role, right? Could I pull this off? And they may not find themselves capable or find the confidence within themselves and say, oh wow, that's a great idea, totally, I'm in. They just see, wow, this could totally go wrong. And so we sometimes forget, with everyone has these limiting beliefs, these ideas of, I couldn't do this, I'm not cut out for something like this, and that is a little bit of what comes back at you, in that presentation. So I always say too, yes, we have these moments where we have to really check where is some of this feedback coming from, where's the place, that these people are coming from, and oftentimes it's a fear that they have with themselves. Just hearing that idea, right? It's like, oh my God, right? I could never imagine doing something like that. And so it's almost the protection kicks in, I don't want you to fail, so maybe better not do it. And that's sometimes the kind of advice we get from the people that are closest to us, right?
Based on their own limiting beliefs, they want to then project that on you.
Yeah. And
so what limiting beliefs came up for you? Or maybe coming up
for
you?
Well, now limiting beliefs is a little bit different, I would say, maybe, or suggest in a sense that it is really something that you believe to be true, either about the world you're in, the people you're around, something within yourself that you believe to be true and is actually limiting you in some ways.
Okay, the belief that I believe to be true.
And to give you an example, is maybe, it's always going to be harder for a woman to get a business off the ground. It's always going to be harder for me as a woman to prove myself, to be taken serious in my business presentation. Sometimes we carry things around and without actually knowing it, that's how we show up,
Right.
right? We walk into a room and go like, oh my God, that's gonna be a steep uphill battle.
Right.
And sure enough, that's what we create because
Sure.
we believe that to be true. And
Sure.
that's how we really perceive everything that's coming our way from that point on forward, right? So we walk into the room, and it's immediately tense because it's gonna be a steep uphill battle. And so those are some of the things that we're sometimes more conscious about than other times. But there's something in us that we seem to be the truth about something, and I want to be very careful about truth and true.
Absolutely.
True is really taking some false assumptions of a temporary situation to be real. And so we got to sometimes differentiate between the two, right? And that's where limiting beliefs come in. We believe that to be true when in fact it really doesn't have to be.
There's
right?
no basis.
It may have been for someone, and it may have been in one situation, doesn't mean it applies and is true for you.
Right.
Well, it's pretty tricky what you just said, because of the fact that it was a consciousness. I mean, I constantly had to be conscious of those beliefs, because I was told, not by one but two people, and then also the interview, that one, because you're a woman, okay, female, because we hear all the time the statistics of women getting financing and funding and support, and even getting venture capitals and angel investors. I've gone to different meetings for years, as far as the angel investors, and majority of them are men or people that were in technology and so forth. So that was, and people have told me that was going to be an area. So you put that aside. Then another is being a minority, an African-American woman. So traditionally you hear that it's a little harder then, especially unless you've got rich uncles or amazing credit or financial background, that it's going to be difficult to that. And then I've also known that being an older woman, I'm 60 plus, so most of the people that are the young people, the millennials are the ones that are going to come in because of the fact that they feel that, I'm at a higher risk of being older. So, and I've had people tell me, Desiree, that you should have, I had one person tell me that you should build your team and make sure that you have, how explicit I can be share, but they have different people in front and you stay in the background.
I've heard that.
You stay in the background, because
strategy.
if you go to present it to a group of investors, and they were doing me a favor because they were being honest and they'll tell me what they're going to be thinking, is that to have someone else handle your financial part of it, have someone else present your marketing, have someone else present your technology, and you just stay in the background so that you don't you don't have that. And that's, so it's an assumption, but it's actually a truth. I mean, it's really a truth to that, because again, these are people that told me that I shouldn't, that's their thoughts. And so you'll have to, but I always believe that there's always that exception. I always believe that there's, again, if I've had experience and exposure and the due diligence, that I would be able to overcome that. And then not everybody feels that way or think that way.
Yes.
So when I do the presentations, but it doesn't mean, but I did get somebody else to handle my handle my financials and handle my marketing and handle my technology, just to kind of close with that. But I still show up. I'm the person so far that's been showing up, because that's being real, and that's who it is. And yes, you have the expertise behind you, but you still have to be, I think you just have to show up the way you are.
With your passion.
With my passion, and so it could be a numbers game. I may not get all of them, but neither does anyone that, possible anyway. So I just have to find that people that believe in me, because you can't stay hiding forever. I want to be, I want to be transparent. I want to show up the way that really is.
I appreciate you sharing your story from the perspective of the assumptions, the interpretations, and the limiting beliefs that you have dealt with throughout this amazing journey. I mean, I cannot wait to get a tour of this specific facility. It's beautiful here. I wish y'all could see it. But along with the things that ail us, our assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs, as Petra mentions, that little gremlin in the back, that voice that's always giving us that bit of doubt. Even though we can process these things with our mind, with our logical thinking, there's still that little gremlin in the back that's giving us all kinds of stories. Is there a story that your little gremlin likes to share with you sometimes that you have to constantly beat him back and go, no, that's not true?
Is, typically in one way or another, you're not good enough.
Right.
And that's really what this boils down to, right? And I think a lot of us tend to over-accomplish and overachieve, because and it's constantly that still not good enough, still not quite there yet, still not ready. And I think that really the root cause for that is oftentimes something that really, even in our program, we really dig into. There's some spots that really date back into some experiences that we've made that told us in some way, shape, or form, you're not creative. And if someone in middle school told you that created like a full stop in your creative career, right? And your ambition to do anything creative, because from that moment on forward, you told yourself, I'm just not creative.
Right.
And I think those things can really get in the way and become problematic if in fact you are creative and you really look for that expressive outlet, but then every time it gets right before you launch,
that gremlin talks you out
I
of
shouldn't
it.
be doing that because I'm really not creative.
So what does your gremlin ever say to you?
I'm not good with numbers. Not good with numbers, and I think that I am. I think I just haven't. It takes more time and more concentration. It doesn't, creativity and marketing flows with me, but the numbers means I think they're stopping and looking at, pay attention. I think this, that just slows me down. I think since it's so, the times where the people communicated their lack of interest or ability to invest would be because of the numbers. They needed more numbers, and to me it's like they're taking more numbers. So anytime someone says more numbers, like I go into this kind of thing. I need someone else to do the numbers. Someone to do the numbers, and and it's probably decided never. Even when I was in college and high school, I had someone else help me with my math, my numbers. But then I also know that not everyone needs to be. You just need to have somebody who is good with numbers on your team, and they can get that information to the people that need it. As such, I don't feel like I need to be good at everything.
That's right.
I think I just need to stand strong in the space that I am good at and be acknowledged that, because I'll never be good, and nor do I desire to be good at everything. I just want to be good at being able to communicate and delivering, what the intended desire is.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because often when I work with leaders that are leading teams, they seem to get it in their head that they have to do everything themselves, and I try to remind them, well, if you're doing everything yourself, how valued do you think your team is feeling right now? And everybody has strengths. So to hear you say, I don't have to be good at math, but even in school, I knew that I needed someone to partner with. And so I really like to try and stress success partnerships. Where I don't have a strength, I will come to you, and vice versa. And that's how we get anywhere. So the next time your gremlin tries to tell you something, go find a success partner and just squash all that right then and there, right?
Yeah.
Or also understand that with a lot of things, this is where things like talent come into the conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? We so overemphasize talent and think someone is just born and they're just good with numbers, or they're just creative, or they're just artistic, or athletic, or have an engineer-wired brain. And a lot of that really, we don't really know talent until we've actually done a lot of deliberate practice. And a lot of the things that we love may not be, something that we started at 3 in kindergarten and just got observed as, oh, she likes to paint, or she likes to do this and that. It's really a matter of getting into something and deliberately practicing it. And we actually have every reason to believe that we can be good at something, even though it may not have been something that, as little kids we were told to be. Oh, you got a talent, in music. Or and sometimes it actually pushes people in a direction that they end up not really developing for, because at some point they realize, that's not who I am. That's really not for me, right? I just kind of fell into that. But talent is oftentimes overrated in that sense, and I think we all have capability with deliberate practice to really get good at the things we want to get good at least to the point where it gets us a certain way, and then to your point with strength and really being able to delegate and saying, I don't have to be, brilliant at everything. I got it to this level, and now I'm going to partner with someone that can take it to the next level from here. Right?
Absolutely.
So before we get into our summary of energy leadership in the 7 levels, I would love to know, how do you keep your energy up?
I keep my energy up, one, by doing yoga. That helps me. That gives me something that I feel like I'm doing for myself, since I do so much for the business and everything and everybody else. And then I also, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Specifically, my favorite is How I Built This. Because anytime I feel like, this is a challenge that you should have known, or a challenge that you may not be able to make it through, or whatever the case may be, then I listen to one of those stories and it's like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine going through what they've gone through, and they work their way through. It's like, woof, okay. Well, my thing is to just really minimize whatever challenge I'm approaching at that time. So
to put things in perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel always better. I feel always smarter, better, and more determined. But it's a self thing. It's a constant self. And there's some days where you are just more on fire than other days, and that's just, I think, no matter what you're doing, where you are, you're gonna feel that. It's constantly, but it's a constant self. And really being, I find I'm very, very now more, because I have to be more selective of the people I spend my time with.
Yes.
You know, the energy around me. You know, I really, it's like you have to have budgets for everything, and I really just kind of really narrowed that budget for people that did not serve me.
Who is actually invigorating you versus draining you,
because
right?
I can't afford to not right now.
Yes.
Even though the love can still be there, I just can't afford it. I can't afford to not be around people that are not truly. You know, I thought about the other day, I had a friend I was with, and I said, you know, I need my friends to be making sure that I don't fail. Like, they're not going to let me fail. It's like I have friends that we're not going to let her fail or him fail. You know, there's no way you let them fail. We're going we got you. We got your back. You know, I need around people now that really feel that way now, especially since we're going through, you know, trying to go through now our next level of growth.
Yes.
You know, that I need people that are just not going to let me fail. Not sitting there waiting for me to fail, but really just saying, hey, I'm not going to let you fail. I got this, I got you, and I'll pull through my resources and my friends and my family and whatever it is to make sure that you make this work.
That is so huge. I've got a couple of girlfriends that are coming to mind right now, and it's true what they say about the 5 people that you spend your most time with are the ones that are really, quote unquote, in your corner and part of your tribe. I think that's huge.
It is huge. It's I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, that's
it's built on trust, right? This is really where trust comes in.
It goes back to, you know, what you, because it's not always money that you need. You need that, you know, money just represents, you need the emotional support. You need to know that someone believes in you other than yourself. Because a sole believer can take you so far for so long, then every well needs to be refilled before it runs dry.
Yes, and to your earlier point about yoga, big thing about energy of success is really part of how do you set yourself up for success? And part of that is not just learning how to shift different energy levels, to your point again, where you said, you know, you're not the same every day. But you got a choice, right? How do I want to show up? Am I supporting myself right now, or am I really standing in my own way, right? With what I'm doing right now. And sometimes we're so wired to do something that we know is going to get us to a certain place that we're not enjoying, and yet we just autopilot go down that same path. And so part of it is really learning how to shift your energy and make that choice versus just having a reaction to something that gets us into that path. The other part is really to know and be mindful of the influences that we have that really impact our ability to set us up for success. And a lot of those are influences that we have in our environment. They're mental influences, emotional influences, there are environmental influences. How do we sit? Where do we work? You know, how do we feel? Anything that really gets us to a place where we can really perform at our highest level is part of that, right? So sometimes to be mindful, like you said, what's the company I surround myself with? Who do I talk to? Who do I get feedback from? All of that is either stimulating or it's draining. It's either added to where we want to go, or it's taken us, you know, or slowing us down. So again, to know what plays into this equation to really get us to where we want to go is extremely important. I think that today, in everything that's going on around us, this has become the biggest challenge for most people, because we're constantly bombarded with distractors, and it becomes more and more challenging to really stay on track and not lose sight of your target, right? Because the moment you lose sight of that target, your energy is going sideways, and at the end of the day, you wonder, why did I not get anywhere today? You didn't get anywhere today because your brain got zapped, you know, by things that, again, did not really further your cause, and instead really, you know, either stalled you or took you backwards.
And just, you know, comment to that is that, you know, the yoga represents a couple different things. One, it helps to be healthy. I mean, everyone's more functional when they're healthy, feeling good about yourself. And not only just feeling healthy internally, but externally feeling that you're showing up in a certain way. But more importantly, it's actually that you are taking control over something. You're controlling, because I mean, we feel that we can't even control ourselves to get to the yoga class on time or to do that we don't have the control. Then everything does kind of. So this kind of puts you in that driver's seat of saying, yes, this is something I said I was going to do, and I'm going to do it. And the next thing, it gives you more discipline to do the next and the next and the next thing throughout your day. But when you sleep in later, which is everyone's entitled to, and that's part of self-help as well. I think it's really important to decide these are days I'm just going to be free, I'm going to be creative, I'm going to be in my own schedule, nobody else's schedule. Those are really good to give yourself as a gift, as a rejuvenate your soul. But it's definitely being able to take control, feel like you've got control of your life in some kind of way, and that's one way to be able to do it, to exercise it.
Well, as we've explored the energy of success and the blockers of what ails us, our assumptions, our interpretations and limiting beliefs, and our gremlins, Desiree, I want to thank you for being so transparent in your journey and those little times when you were dealing with those things. We really appreciate it, and I believe that you're going to have a live event here in which we're going to be sharing a little bit about the 7 levels of energy. Can you tell us about that? And then, Petra, would you give us a little synopsis of each one of those 7 levels?
Little synopsis.
Tell us about the event.
Yeah, so we're going to schedule an event with the Parrish and Parrish team, and we're also going to extend an invitation to our community. So anyone that's listening that finds this information valuable and wants to learn more, because again, it's something to explore. I mean, if nothing else, the self-exploration is valuable, but it's really to make a difference with your team. And it's really, when you're setting up a company, you really have to do some things right. And considering the bookkeeping and legal, but this is part of it. And I think this is part of being able to set yourself up for success, is to really know what you don't know, and don't worry about what you don't know. Make sure that you hire or engage someone who does know it and let them handle that, because you can't do everything. You don't want to do everything. Again, especially if you're a founder, CEO, whatever, you need to stay in your lane and outsource all the different things that do your team. Your team is imperative when you grow. It's imperative. It's not really an option.
Yes.
It really is imperative. And now with all the different things that we've covered, as far as in different mediums, the different cultures, the different, the themes that people use, it's imperative to do that. So we're going to have an event here at Homework, and the date and everything to be announced. Yes? Yes, stay tuned. Stay tuned for the dates to be announced. But it's an opportunity for you to come and join us and hear more, to meet these beautiful young ladies, Anita and Petra, from the Parrish team, and to be able to learn more about where you are, and then how you're able to be the better person, be the better.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I just feel better already.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So what are some of the things that
some of the things we're going to probably dive more into is
the 7
levels of energy and how they manifest and how they show up for everyone on a daily basis. We typically differentiate between 2 situations. One is where things in your day go kind of the way they normally do, and then we look at the scenario when you're triggered. And when we're triggered, or when there's a button pushed, we typically react in a way that we do not choose, which is obviously the preferred option. If we pause for a second and actually choose a response, we typically are more, to your point, in control of where we're going. With a reaction, we're on the default path, and that typically creates less of what we want.
Right
so
here, I want to add a little something, because you're talking about where we typically go and the fact that we have to stop and think and take time. I want to share something with you. It's not your fault. You have a brain. And our brain, our amygdala, is the autopilot that when we're triggered, we just automatically go there. It's our prefrontal cortex that allows us the opportunity to stop and think about what our reaction is going to be.
Our response in that sense, yes.
Exactly.
So we differentiate between those 2 situations. The trigger, or the intensity of the trigger, plays into the equation, and the duration for which we're exposed to it. But those are the 2 typical scenarios we look at. We use a foundational assessment for that, which is an energy leadership index assessment, and it gives a pretty accurate snapshot of energetically how do you show up at the moment. Doesn't mean that you cannot show up completely different. We usually do one before the program and one after the program, just to show that development. But it gives an accurate snapshot of this is kind of what's happening for you based on where your different levels are. And when we talk about 7 different levels, we really talk about awareness and consciousness. So when we talk about lower levels of energy, which is your 1 and 2, little bit of 3, and we talk about 2 different types of energy, which is catabolic and anabolic. One is an energy that supports you and inspires you. One is an energy that again drains you.
Which might go back to what you're saying about being mindful of the people that you surround you with.
Yes.
The people who have the energy that...
Anabolic energy versus catabolic energy.
Right.
Because we and this is something that anyone can probably share in as far as an experience is concerned. We sometimes enter with a group of people and we're either drawn to someone or we're pretty quickly almost physically retract. And there are a couple of different reasons to it, but most often it's really there's either a match in frequency and vibration or there is none. And if there's none, either you're on a higher frequency and this other person's on a lower frequency, for some reason we're not coming together. And that there's a sensation that kicks in for us, and as humans we start to seek a little bit of a distance at that point. The idea of, again, lower level frequencies is really there is a lot less awareness, and typically people that vibrate predominantly on lower level energies are very much within themselves. So it's I'm not going to say tunnel vision, but it really is a perception of very little ability to see big picture, very little ability to see options. And these people feel typically a little bit trapped in, I don't have a choice, or I'm, victim to something. Or there is a lot of anger and resentment still that's driving, certain decisions. So very judgmental, things are being taken very personal, and those are the levels that are typically not allowing us to propel. And whatever that is, for everyone, we talked about some of the blocks that are typically dominant there. All of these things can be addressed and overcome, and it's a beautiful process to finally climb over some of those hurdles and actually realize, wow, this is who I can be, if I'm not held back by a lot of that. And so
would it be safe to
give
say
a
that levels 1 to 3 are like the levels that we get in our own way, we have
mostly catabolic, yes.
Okay, so tell us about 4 and 5.
We move on a little bit into that rationalizing, tolerating space with level 3, but starting at level 4, we're really getting more anabolic and more, less judgmental and much more able to see, it's together versus just individual. It's, we win together versus I win and you lose. There's a lot of different, if you use different analogies, it all comes together and makes sense. What I want to bring in maybe as an example is our way of approaching anything in different ways, in different energy levels. A great example would be money, right? So when we think about money at a level 1, money, my approach to money is like lack, right? Scarcity. Not enough to go around. That's a typical level 1. I don't have a choice. I'm the victim of some type of circumstance, and there's not enough. There's this outlook of I'm not seeing abundance. I'm seeing scarcity. That's typical level 1. When we look at a level 2, there's a little bit more drive, but really where it's coming from is more this greed, right? I can't get enough. Again, if there's not enough to go around, someone's got to be left out of the equation here, and it's very self-centered. There's a lot of tune into self. There's very little. It's just like I win, you lose, right? If I win, you have to lose, basically as a consequence. And then we move into a level 3. If I stick with that example, level 3 with respect to money is basically this kind of budget, right? There's a control. There is like me tolerating something that's less than ideal. It's not what I want, but I'm somehow just going to make it work because I need to get from here to here. It still doesn't include a lot of people. It's just kind of like when I say, I win, and if you win, I don't mind. But it's not really, a win-win. It's not really an inclusive type of thinking or approach. It's still coming from short-term, I'm trying to get to something, and okay, if you benefit in the process, fine, but you know, it's still very centered on I need to get somewhere, I need to win. At level 4, you know, you get really, like I said, a little bit more in this anabolic range of energies, and at that level, you're really more about the other people. Out of a sudden, we're able to get a little bit beyond this really small circle of self-awareness into something that includes more, judges less. And level 4 is really more of a, you know, we're in this together, but I'm really mindful of how you fare.
Okay.
So it's really all about you win. And it's a level which I sometimes label caregiver. It's almost in every level has pros and cons. At level 4, the con may actually swing to burnout because people really invest a lot of their energies into holding other people and bringing other people along, and there's a little bit less self-care, or maybe not enough self-care. That can sometimes happen, for example, at level 4. But again, when it comes to money, level 4 would really be the charity level, right? We're really about the other. At a level 5, it's a win-win. So at level 5, we're really able to look at opportunity. The perspective is getting from problem-focused really to solution-focused. And out of a sudden, instead of seeing obstacles, we see an opportunity. And that has a lot to do at this point too, how we deal with, for example, failure. Right? Do we accept failure as a stepping stone to success? Do we realize that that's part of the equation, or do we keep beating ourselves up? Level 6 would get us really into this joyful giving, right? Out of a sudden, we're all in it together. There's not this separation anymore, and we really become one with a much larger scenario, with a much larger group. And 7, I always say 7 is that genius energy. 7 is that when we are in a flow, and I think all of us have experienced this, when we're doing something that we love doing, there's no sense of time, there's no sense of place. Out of a sudden, you're immersed in something and it just flows, and that's really that level 7 energy. It's not really something we can sustain 100% for a long period of time, but we can tap into it, and it really gives us wings to move forward. Level 7, with respect to money, would really be what is
it doesn't matter anymore.
At this point, it's a fabricated, it's something we developed, you know, just like time in a sense, that helps us measure something, but in that sense, it's no longer, you know, the driver for anything. So it's a beautiful, again, energy to tap into. It's very most creative, most visionary, but the art really is, and that's something that we train as part of the core energy program, is how do we tap into any of these energies and really utilize this to our advantage? And be clear about where we want to go, and be clear about, and that's another part of this, what our values are that really express who we are, truly in terms of not who we think we are or who we have to be, but who are we really, and what is really fundamental to us that gets us from A to B and is part of our decision-making process. So there's a little bit of that, you know, learning about what really are your values, what drives you, what motivates you, what do you want to accomplish, and then really the idea of how do you get there easier, more joyful, more fulfilled and faster, versus struggling, you know, because you're really not clear, first of all, who you are, and then secondly, you know, of how to really support yourself best and on your journey.
So to sum this up in layman's terms, because I'm familiar with everything that Petra's talking about, because we're both certified in this, but when I first went to the course, I'm like, what the heck is she talking about? So to sum this up in layman's terms, basically we're talking about how you raise your level of awareness when you're in a situation, why you're feeling the way you are. It's metacognition. Last technical term of the day, metacognition. Thinking about what you're thinking about. This person's getting on my nerves. Why might that be? Is it more about that person or more about you and an experience that you had with someone else that's triggering? So if you come to the live event, which is going to be announced very soon, these are some of the things that you're going to learn about. Desiree, this is your first foray into energy leadership. What do you think so far, and are you looking forward to it?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm thinking of all these different things, myself, my team, my partners, my this, my that, and everybody should, I think it's just something, and that, I think also too, it's not something you do once and you're done.
It's a
as
journey.
we grow,
Beautiful,
as we
yes.
grow,
Everything's a journey.
things will change and we change, and as things, our lives change. You know, whether we're married or single, or empty nesters or not, or
Yes.
living in California or living in Portland, Oregon, or just all those different scenarios. That those things you constantly need to keep reassessing this. And it should be
Yes.
just part of your growth process, and it's something you enjoy, you look forward to, and you embrace.
Well, we
Absolutely.
really appreciate you
Thank you.
sharing us with your
Thank you.
lovely audience
I
out
can't
here.
wait. I can't wait. And for those of you that are not on our list, please go to Homework, HOMWORK, and just opt in. That way, that goes into our list, and we'll make sure that we extend the invitation to you, and you don't miss it just by having to rely on us to share it on Facebook. So anyone that wants to be included on our events, just go to Homework, HOM, no E,
No, you
WORK.
It is really silent.
.com, very silent. And then we have an opt-in there, and just opt-in is free, it's no membership, and that way you'll be on our list, and we'll gladly extend the invitation to you. And these two young ladies are going to be here again, really to pour out into you. It's an opportunity you can't miss, so stay tuned.
And we're all in different places, right? I just want to make sure everyone knows we're not going from anything that's not working to working. We're really optimizing. So again, no matter where anyone is in their journey, we always have areas where we tolerate something that's less than ideal, right? That's less than what we want, and for some reason we tell ourselves this has to suffice. It's good enough, right? I don't need. When in fact we can go further. We just need to learn how do we support ourselves better in getting to where we actually can go. Right?
Yeah. This is going to be for the people that realize that life is good and it can even be better.
Yes.
So on behalf of Parrish Partners, I'm Dr.
Yes.
Nita. This is Petra. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
I'm going to excuse me.
How long were we talking? I had
An
no idea.
hour.
An hour.
That's why I was trying to rush you through. I'm like,